You are anti-Jewish, period. Total moral bankruptcy. It's ridiculous. It's one big false narrative.
We're seeing a lot of hatred coming to the fore, not just from Hamas terrorists, but even other individuals, ordinary citizens all around the world, either against Jews or against Israel. How does that make you feel, first of all, given what has happened on October 7 and the 2 weeks after that?
Yeah, honestly, in a way, this kind of like, destroys my fundamental belief of never again. I grew up saying never again, and I actually just posted about this on my social media. I said, when I said never again, from my perspective, one of the main reasons that the Holocaust would never happen again is because the world would not allow it to happen again. And clearly that was debunked. And another reason that I said never again is because we have social media now that, you can't hide. And not only did they not hide, they live streamed their atrocities, and yet the world does not stand by the Jews. So the real conclusion that I have is that indeed never again, because of 3 letters, IDF. That's the only reason that the Holocaust will never happen again.
What do you make of the burden that is being put by some sections on Israel and Israelis as far as the entire conflict in Israel and Palestine is concerned? What did you make of the reactions to the Hamas terror? Because some even came out very openly celebrating it.
Yeah, it's a very, very sad state of affairs when the world does not differentiate between an army that does everything to minimize civilian deaths and a terrorist organization that does everything to maximize civilian deaths. The distinction could not be any clearer. And yet, because of a lack of morality, total moral bankruptcy, the world still does not side with the Jews. And it begs the question, what has to happen if after such atrocities and a terror organization, still the world doesn't stand with the Jews? Will they ever stand with the Jews? And the answer is clearly not. So Israel has to do what it has to do, despite, the increasing pressure from the global community to hold our fire. We are absolutely not going to hold our fire. We need to do what's right. We need to do what's moral. And truth be told, throughout history, we were dependent on them, and we know how that went well. So, right now it's in our own hands. We need to do what's right.
But why do you think that is? Why do you think that even in the face of such brutal terror from Hamas, in many cases, we don't even see the visuals. We only hear about the stories. In this case, we have seen the visuals. As you said, some of it was live video. Why do you think the world is still kind of, some parts of the world are still pinning Israel as the oppressor or as a country that deserved it, as Israelis as a people who deserved it? Why do you think that is?
The expression, just because I'm paranoid doesn't mean people aren't really following me, right? Just because we say anti-Semitism and people are sick of hearing anti-Semitism doesn't mean that anti-Semitism is not very real. It is very real. Every generation it takes on a new face, whether it's Nazi Germany, whether it's the pogroms, the Spanish Inquisition, and on and on and on. We were exiled from countries every 14 years throughout our history, on average, 14 years. And so it came the time for the Western civilization to turn on the Jews, and that's what's happening right now. It's not like we didn't expect it to happen. We have history books. We know what happens. It's happening now. And now it's in a new disguise, a new mask called anti-Zionism, as if anti-Zionism is not the same as anti-Semitism, because Zionism is the most core, principle to Judaism. Every Jew in the history of the Jewish people, prayed to Jerusalem. We mention Jerusalem hundreds of times every day. Jerusalem is core to Judaism. If you are anti-Zion, which is Jerusalem, you are anti-Jewish. Period. And the fact that people, like to make a salad and say, no, I'm just anti-Zionist. It's ridiculous. And this is the new form of anti-Semitism. And every generation takes on a new face. This is the face of anti-Semitism 2023.
We've seen a lot of pro-Hamas demonstrations in the Western world, even in academia. Some have, if not celebrated it, condoned it. Some have called it resistance by any means necessary. And they continue to say or project that Israel is the oppressor here. It occupied the Palestinian land. How would you like to respond to those individuals? Because for them, this is not a level playing field. Israel is the oppressor and the Palestinians are the oppressed.
Well, we can talk opinions till we're blue in the face, or we could talk historical facts. Israel was not occupying Gaza. Israel evacuated Gaza in 2005. There was not one Jew, not one Israeli soldier in Gaza, not one. There was no oppression. There was no occupation. It's one big false narrative. In fact, forget 2005. If they wanted a state, they would have had a state many times throughout the years. This isn't a nationalistic agenda. This is an agenda that they state clearly, black and white, in their charter. The PLO, when it was established by an arch terrorist named Yasser Arafat, the PLO in its charter writes that they exist for one reason and one reason only, and that is to destroy the Jewish state. And the Hamas in their charter, same exact thing. And so people can, paint us as the oppressor all they want. The reality is there was not one Jew there. We gave them Gaza on a silver platter to create a state. They didn't want a state. They created a terror base. And that's it. It's not an opinion. This is just historical fact. And the fact that people don't want to look at actual history and look at facts because, their opinion doesn't, work with the actual historical facts. That's not my problem. People open up history books. There was not one Jew in Gaza. We were not oppressing. And you know what? Even if you're going to talk about the occupation, if you're telling me that the occupation is what caused, Muslim terror against Jews, then presumably if you have, a little bit of logic in your head, the logical conclusion is before the occupation, there should not have been terror. Well, 1929, before any occupation, before even the state of Israel was established, there was the Hebron massacre, Arabs massacring Jews in Hebron. So again, it's a false narrative. And, truth be told, the Palestinians are excellent at PR. The fact that any media, a channel or newspaper or anybody is even talking about the Palestinian, that word in and of itself is a lie. What is a Palestinian Arab? When was there ever an Arab-Palestinian state? It never existed. So Israel did not occupy an Arab-Palestinian state. It is one big fabrication, and the world just eats it up. Why does the world eat it up? That brings us back to the beginning of our conversation, because they hate Jews. They hate Jews, and they will use any excuse that they can to paint Jews negatively. And again, this is what they're doing. They're painting Israel as the oppressor, when in reality, there is zero basis to that on a factual level.
Despite that, because Israel is, let's say, the greater military power here, a lot of burden is being put on Israel. One, this word has been talked about quite a bit of proportional response. We are still wondering what that proportional response really means and where does that stop. But given the complexity of the issue, a lot of appeals and calls are being made that whatever response the IDF mounts, they must consider the collateral loss of civilian life on the other side. Do you believe that there is some responsibility with the Israeli forces when it comes to this?
The responsibility that Israel has to the Palestinian people is the equivalent and the parallel of what the world had to Germany in World War II. Did anybody ask about the innocent Germans in Germany who died in World War II? And yet somehow, only when it comes to the Jews, somehow everyone asks proportionate response. They came into our country in the middle of a holiday and they massacred, raped, and abducted over 1,300 innocent people. So I really think, yet again, it's time to throw out these false narratives of proportionate response. This isn't a question of Palestinians. The Palestinians elected Hamas. Hamas needs to pay the price for what they did. And I hope and pray that our government is strong enough to withstand that pressure, because there's no question that the pressure is mounting and increasing, but we need to do what's right. We know what right is, and that is eliminating Hamas from existence, because if we don't get rid of Hamas now, if anybody in the world thinks that they're stopping at Israel, then read their charter. They don't want Israel. They want the entire Western world, Islamified. So people have to open their eyes. People have to stop lying to themselves, look at the facts, and let Israel do what it needs to do. In fact, not only should the world allow us to do what we need to do, not only should they stand by us when we do what we need to do, they should thank us for doing their work. I have to tell you, our situation right now is, on the one hand, unprecedented and unparalleled in any other nation in the world. On the other hand, for us, it's kind of what we're used to, which is, on the one hand, deep sadness, despair of what we witnessed in the last, couple of weeks. But on the other hand, resilience that is hard to describe in language, because it is truly supernatural. It's unbelievable unity that we're seeing in this nation. And so we have to balance those two, seemingly contradictory emotions of, one, sadness, deep sadness, devastation on the one hand, but standing up, acting, with heroism, helping each other, whether it's the soldiers, the families of the abducted, whatever it is, everyone has stepped up. And now when I say everyone, I don't just mean, normal civilians. I mean the entire tech world in Israel stepping up, using our technology to help in the war. They're setting up, bases for families to live in different, homes and different hotels and different offices. So the entire country and the entire nation has gotten together, has unified to win this war, not only on the battlefield, but on the digital battlefield and on the humanitarian battlefield, where we, unfortunately suffered a horrible crisis and atrocity as a result of what Hamas did. But we will win this, because we always do. And when we win this, what was will no longer be. The reality of Hamas sitting on our borders, accumulating sophisticated weapons from Iran, that reality is over. Hamas as an entity is over. They realize that they bit off too much than that they can handle. They realize that now, but it's too late, and they are going to pay the price. We are slowly but surely defeating Hamas, and again, we will completely eliminate, and we will not stop until Hamas is eliminated.